Hey everyone, and welcome back to another World of Warcraft video. So, look, it's been a really interesting week within World of Warcraft. Of course, it's been a rough and kind of sad week outside of World of Warcraft with the news of Totalbiscuit's death, and that's something I'm going to talk about later on in today's video, but I want to do the news first. So, before we get into the news, I want to start off with a little bit of housekeeping. The beta key giveaway has been completed last Sunday night at midnight, and the winners were contacted the following morning. So, so far, around 70% have opened up their emails. If you haven't done that, be sure to check. Yeah, there might just be a beta key hiding underneath all your GDPR emails. And we're also coming to the end of the month, which means it is the last chance to pick up this month's Patreon poster, and it also means next month's one is done. I'm still waiting on the prints to arrive, but here's the art. It's kind of incredible, so yeah, that's what we're going to be doing for June. But with all that said, let's get right into the news. And we're going to kick it off with allied race unlocks. Of course, they're always a big topic, and the unlock process for the Magkar Orcs and the Dark Iron Dwarves has been unveiled on the beta. And it's really simple, you just have to complete the faction-appropriate war campaign. So it pretty much is the reward for the big bit of, like, the end of the 8.0 content, and in my view, that is really solidifying that the start of Battle for Azeroth, yes, we're dealing with G'huun, but we are gathering allies, we're getting the Xandalari fleet, we're getting the Magkar, the Kultirans, the Dark Irons. Both sides are preparing for the Battle for Azeroth, and I really feel like the Battle for Azeroth, that's probably going to be 8.1, 2, and 3. Next, we've got some comics to talk about. So Blizzard unveiled the first of 3 comics that give us a bit more of the backstory that leads into the expansion. Now, the first one contains a bit of information about what Jaina was doing during Legion. That's something a lot of people are curious about. And, well, at the start of the expansion, she left the Kirin Tor because they accepted the Horde into Dalaran. She wasn't down with that. And as it turns out, she spent the duration of Legion fighting demons alone. So if you had some sort of grand conspiracy in mind, well, it would seem that really isn't it, and they're just glossing over, yep, she was fighting demons, that's really essentially all there is to it. That said, there probably still is wiggle room for her to have done something interesting over that time. Really, the core of what this covers, though, is how Jaina has always chose what she thought was right at the time, but really she's always been kind of punished for it with how things have turned out. And as time went on, she's kind of hardened to the world and she expresses regret over her past, how she, as an example, could have ended the Horde if she wanted to, but gave in to weakness and was merciful, and at least that's what she thinks is weakness now. Now, this is pretty in line with the Jaina that we see in Battle for Azeroth. They really do manage to make her this scary figure during the Horde introduction scenario. Basically, this is a Jaina who is done with peace, she's not taking shit from anyone. But once again, though, we see that more of the storytelling is external to the game. So from the perspective of many players, they are going to see the BFA Jaina and conclude that, yep, she's just went a bit mad again, pretty much a repeat of the memed on Mists of Pandaria Jaina. Now, the motivations for her character that are covered in this comic, they make a lot of sense, and what she does in BFA is completely in line with who her character is. It's just kind of sad that that is going to be lost on many different people. Now, let's talk about scenarios. I mentioned the Horde intro scenario there, and we do have some good news. The scenarios at the start of this expansion are skippable once you've completed them once, according to a bunch of data mine text. This means Battle for Lordaeron and both faction-specific scenarios that followed up, they can all be skipped. Now, that's great because I really don't like the Battle for Lordaeron. As for the follow-up ones, they're okay. The core problem is that the game is somewhat suspended, like you're put into a 20 to 30 minute long set piece with very little in the way of player agency or rewards. Hell, you can pretty much AFK through it. Now, Tanaan Jungle was a big problem at the time because it was a bit longer and it was also linear, and you couldn't skip it, but I'd argue it had better gameplay. You were constantly rewarded as you were going through Tanaan through World of Warcraft's normal questing mechanics, and that was not done at the expense of still having set pieces and high production values. I think it's always hard when a game is so heavily entrenched in a certain genre, like WoW, and then it attempts to break out and do something different. For me, these scenarios are they're an honest attempt at trying to be a big AAA narrative game with set pieces, but it's kind of a square peg in a round hole. But anyway, I'm glad it can be skipped. Next, the Pathfinder unlock. There was a faux controversy last week where the Pathfinder achievement kind of looked like you needed to do both the Alliance and Horde campaigns, which would mean you'd need 2 characters, so cue a whole bunch of accusations about Blizzard being evil. Well, Blizzard have clarified, saying that both campaigns are not needed. You just need to do one campaign, the Alliance one or the Horde one, to get Pathfinder. And next, Keystone Master. I suppose we're on the topic of achievements. Keystone Master is going to be continued onward into BFA. Now, Blizzard are making it so that completing the Battle for Azeroth version will still unlock the relevant artifact weapon appearance. What this essentially means is that if you're really worried about getting your artifact appearances, all you need to do is worry about the Mage Tower, right? So you probably have 4 or 5 cycles of the Mage Tower until the pre-patch comes, and that's no longer something that you can unlock. So yeah, I very much recommend doing the Mage Tower now if you're interested. Next, Azeroth. So the Azeroth UI is in, and it's really pretty. But UI is for the user to interface with. This is kind of just a pain in the butt, and I'd far rather have the placeholder UI that we had, which just laid things out clearly in a grid. When I click on my Azeroth gear, I'm not there to marvel at a bunch of pretty animations, I'm there to select options on a menu. The goal should be to get me out of that menu and back into the game as quickly as is possible, so that's a little bit unfortunate. But thankfully, we do have some nice stuff to show you. There are 3 new animations for the Demonology Warlocks. They look awesome, and overall, I have a fair degree of Demonology Warlock envy, because just from a visual perspective, they're so damn satisfying to play. So let's look at the animations. And if that wasn't enough shininess for you, we do have a secret mount. So yep, it's another secret. BFA is not out, and yeah, here we go with a mount guide. This all comes from the secret finding Discord, who I'm sure are going to be tremendously busy during Battle for Azeroth, given how just successful the whole secrets initiative was in Legion. So there are a bunch of Naga-related enemies around Fort Dalen in Stormsong Valley. Now, they have a super rare chance, well, kind of rare chance, to drop Abyssal Fragments. Once you've got 20 of those, you need to go to the Altar of the Abyss, which is pretty well hidden. To get it, you need to go northwest of the entrance to the Shrine of the Storms dungeon entrance, and there's a waterfall which you can go behind. That's where the shrine is. Once you've done that, you use the fragments. This gives you an abhorrent essence of the Abyss, which you can use to summon an adherent of the Abyss, which is level 120 elite that's probably going to take a few players to kill, and killing it will get the person who summoned it the mount. So it's probably best to get, you know, all your friends to grind up their 20 fragments and then just go there and kill the boss a few times as a group. It will likely, though, be soulable as time goes on. As for the mount, well, it is a, you know, like a reskin of one that we've seen before, but this is my favorite skin of that model, so I'm pretty damn happy to see it in the game. Hell, if you throw on an Emerald Nightmare themed Mog, you're going to look pretty damn great on it. Okay, class changes time. Fury Warriors, right, they've been in a little bit of flux, and what we essentially see is a kind of an overhaul to the spec. I'm not 100% sure if I like it so far, but it is in flux, so we're going to withhold full judgment and a video until things are more concrete. First, Enrage now increases haste rather than attack speed. This means that it's going to affect your buttons a lot more, and right now it's 25% haste, so it's kind of like a mini Bloodlust, and I really like this change. And then also the health and damage related mechanics are gone from Enrage and Titan Grip, which I'm totally fine with. Now, Blizzard they essentially said they want Enrage uptime to be about 60% and not change that much over the expansion. The way that they've done this is that Enrage is on a 4-second duration on the beta, but your actual rage generation is increased, which should balance things out and have you using, just basically having your rampage usages feel right, which is one of the things they were tuning. Now, Bloodthirst no longer works based off crits. It's just a flat 30% chance to enrage you, and then Raging Blow is totally different. It's now a 7.5 second cooldown that's affected by haste and has 2 charges, with each usage of it having a 25% to just give you a free charge. And you don't need to be enraged to use it. And Blizzard feel that this fits better with Rampage and Bloodlust, which they didn't really want to change that much because they like them. So having 2 charges means there's more flexibility in its usage, which means that it won't clash with your other cooldowns because you can manage it. And they like the unpredictability that's introduced by the 20% chance cooldown reset. Now, Furious Slash has been changed and now generates a little bit of rage and has a 10% chance to trigger Enrage. It's very much a first try though, and they said they are going to test removing it and having Whirlwind take its place as filler. Then Recklessness has also been changed. It now has a much smaller crit chance mechanic because crit's less of a thing for this spec, and what takes its place is double rage regeneration. So what basically I found is that it's really fast, and then also do bear in mind, this is on a level 110 character and it's still really fast. And the only thing that you don't really see in a target dummy much is the Execute changes. Execute now generates rage and has a cooldown. Basically, it acts as a new rage generator for when you're near the end of a fight, which means that the pace of combat increases even more in that scenario. So what do I think about it? Well, overall, it's on the face of it pretty fun. It can feel a little bit too simple, just a matter of, you know, not mashing your buttons too much, but otherwise, you know, just hitting stuff that kind of lights up, which sounds a little bit, as for Furious Strike, I think it would be more interesting if it was a form of Spender with a super low GCD and probably, you know, a mechanic that was in the place of Rampage. So imagine a half GCD Mongoose Bite mechanic with a super short duration. I think that would be cool, but, you know, that just being placed aside, I think this is probably something that's going to go down pretty well for Fury. I like the move away from crit dependence. I think that's pretty good. I think the fast pacing is still great if that's what you like. There's, yeah, potentially positive changes here, which I think are very good. I'm interested to see how they change this over time. And one thing that they did say is that they're trying to sort of step back the multiple overlapping cooldowns. That's something they're going to be doing in the future, which of course ties into the global cooldown changes where, you know, Fury was one of the more heavily hit because they were using multiple overlapping cooldowns. Like, you know, you're doing your dragon shout thing, you're doing your avatar, and maybe it was just a little bit too much buffs and debuffs followed up without attack. So that's something that they're looking to polish up. So yeah, I'll keep tabs on this, and whenever we do get a full set of end-to-end changes, that's probably when I'll do a full video. And then to cap off today, well, we've got the news with Totalbiscuit. I'm not great at talking about this stuff. If you're not aware, he died recently, and I think for me, the easier way to talk about this is actually just to say how he impacted my life and where I went, and I imagine that there'll be a lot of people in various parts of the gaming industry who are going to have a pretty damn similar story. So I got into World of Warcraft, and at the time, I really didn't know what YouTube was. Oddly enough, podcasting was the first thing that I had known of before YouTube. And of course, that led me to Warcraft Radio, which had shows like Blue Please, which was, I think that was like pretty much his thing. He did University Radio and then moved into Blue Please, I believe. So basically most of Warcraft Radio is what I would be listening to way back in those days. And then what actually introduced me to YouTube as a platform, I basically did not use YouTube at all before, is when Warcraft Radio ended up being shut down. Totalbiscuit moved his stuff over to YouTube. That is what got me interested in YouTube. Of course, Cataclysm, the Cataclysm beta, that got me very interested in World of Warcraft and also World of Warcraft coverage, which oddly enough, I tried very briefly in Mists of Pandaria, but that is something that I am never going to, well, I mean, I can't because I deleted it off my channel. Yeah, that was weird, but so he got me interested in all of that stuff, and broadly just the idea of, oh, you can cover games on the internet, that can be a thing that people enjoy. And then StarCraft was the other major thing, which really from the release of StarCraft 2 up until like 2013-14, StarCraft was majorly a thing. And the reason why my channel restarted, because it actually did exist before that, but again, I'm not undeleting or unprivating that stuff, was because a bunch of Totalbiscuit's tournaments, like Shoutcraft and stuff, got me super, super back into StarCraft 2 again, like really passionate about it. And this YouTube channel started because I was like, you know what, maybe I would be good at playing StarCraft if I streamed it. And I thought, well, I may as well mirror those onto YouTube, right? So that's why the initial content of this new wave of the channel was StarCraft 2 stuff, because essentially TB doing StarCraft stuff made me want to get better at StarCraft again. I then enjoyed the process of uploading things onto YouTube, and I was like, oh, I've started playing World of Warcraft again, I could probably do that. And of course, like before that, you know, Totalbiscuit was the big guy when it came to World of Warcraft. And I know Noble and Co. all existed at that time. I honestly didn't know that they existed, though, because I think the whole World of Warcraft YouTube scene, after Totalbiscuit and Jesse Cox stepped away from that, I think it sort of didn't exist for a long time, and it like took time for that to build up again. So when it came to me hopping into World of Warcraft YouTube, I mean, the very first thing I did was a daily news thing. That's obviously was... I mean, I don't want to say inspiration. It was basically just a flat rip-off of Azeroth Daily, which was Totalbiscuit's show. Thankfully, I moved away from flat rip-offs as time went on. But I think all of this is to say that a lot of where I am right now is that like it directly ties to how his output and his work influenced my life and the things that I find interesting. So thank you very much for watching. I'd be interested in hearing anything you've got to share and all of that down in the comments. And yeah, I will see you next time.